Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all again. For those who are back, good to see some new faces as well. And hello, everybody watching online. Glad to have you. We are still in Eastertide, so let's stand and sing a song we learned together last week, celebrating a risen Lord. What is buried, you can raise again. What is lifeless, you'll breathe life within. What seems over to you, it's not the end. There's nothing that you cannot do. I'm ready, God, to see you move. There's resurrection power right here, it's breaking now. Let dead things come to life. Let dry bones come alive. The one who empties graves is here to do the same. Let dead things come to life. Let dry bones come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dead things come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Out of darkness, you've brought victory. Torn the veil and made a way for me. And now I'm standing with the risen King, staring at an empty tomb. 'Cause Jesus, you're the living proof. There's nothing that you cannot do. I'm ready, God, to see you move. There's resurrection power right here, it's breaking now. Let dead things come to life. Let dry bones come alive. The one who empties graves is here to do the same. Let dead things come to life. Let dry bones come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dead things come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dead things come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future. And life is worth the living just because he lives. Oh, there's resurrection power right here, it's breaking now. Let dead things come to life. Let dry bones come alive. The one who empties graves is here to do the same. Let dead things come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Yeah. Come alive, come alive. Let dead things come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dead things come alive. Come alive, come alive. Let dry bones come alive. Y'all sound great this morning. Let's take a few minutes to get to know each other, get familiar with each other. I know sometimes that person-to-person connection can be a little bit weird if you're new or you're not super familiar with people yet, but that's the point. We want to get to know each other because church isn't just coming to worship. Church is building community with one another. So we're going to give you all a question to talk about, though. So you got something to talk about. So meet someone new or find someone you are less familiar with and share something that's been giving you life this week. All right, go.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Good morning. Hey. I heard a lot of laughs out there. Well, welcome to the Grove. I'm Miranda, one of the service members here. And we're a new church that is about growing goodness. And so I like to bring everybody's attention to the pamphlets. And there's some connection points that I want to bring on. Inside of there, there's a form. If you guys could fill that out, there'll be a basket that comes through. That basket is also for donations. Other ways to donate are going to be Venmo or online. And if you're online, there's a link. But wait until the end to click that because it will boot you out of this service. The other thing is we've got some things going on with the church. So there's connection points, some groups, things like that. But also on Friday, we had our pajama ball, which was a huge success. Over 170 people. Yeah. So over 170 people attended that event, and it was great. Some other things, there's ways to get involved. That is also on the inside of the pamphlet. And then we also want to talk about the showcase coming up this next Saturday. That's going to be at the high school church at Park. So if anybody wants to attend that'll be going on. And then finally, one of the other things about this church is we're huge into kids. Kids is a big part of it, obviously with the pajama ball. So there's ways for the kids to kind of have fun and be free. There's a quiet area over here with coloring and blocks. There's coloring in the pews for all ages, so it doesn't matter age, feel free to color. And then shortly, in a little bit, we'll actually send the kids off to Godly Play, where they can go and play and have fun while we stay in here for the service.
Thanks, Miranda. And by the way, my name is Katie. I'm the worship arts director here. My pronouns are she, her. And
Sorry,
these are our kids in the front row that are disturbing us. There's lipstick happening. Could get bad.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, if we seem distracted, it's almost always our kids that are distracting us. But hey, I don't know if anybody noticed a rather tall individual who we usually see here is not here this morning. Our dear Jeremy got the COVID. Boo.
Boo.
I know. So please be in prayer for him and his family, not just because of normal COVID frustrations, but they were supposed to go on vacation this week too. So rough. But he was well enough to record his sermon for us, and so we'll get to watch that on video today. Warren said, it's funny, usually people from home are watching video of in-person church, and here we are in person watching video of a sermon, so it's a little bit backwards today. But so we are all, as a volunteer team, realizing all the little things that Jeremy usually does week to week that we are now responsible for. So bear with us if there's things we're missing or things that seem a little off. We're making it. And we are praying for Jeremy and Chelsea and their girls that everything ends up well. All right. During this next song, we're going to pass around the baskets Miranda mentioned. This is a time if you have paper offerings, you can put them in there. But it's also a time there's a sheet inside your pamphlet where you can put down your information. And that is a form of offering too. Like you being here, just simply showing up is a form of offering. So if the baskets come by and you filled that out already and you want to drop that in the basket, great. If you're like, I didn't have time yet, don't worry. The baskets will be back there at a table so you can drop them in there when you leave. But let's stand, and we want to teach you all a new song. It's one I stumbled across recently, and I love it so much. You know, I think culturally in modern day Christianity, there's a lot of talk about living for this greater purpose and changing the world and doing these big, huge things in this sort of like sensational faith experience we're supposed to have. But what I find to be actually true is that God shows up in the most mundane times, in the littlest moments, in the simplest relationships. Those seem kind of boring at times, but in those moments, God is with us. Like when we're doing dishes at our kitchen sink and thinking about our day, or when we're on a long walk with a friend or something like that. And so as we start this new series we're calling Back to Basics, we're kind of focusing in on what are those just elemental parts of life, the simple parts of life that are true no matter what circumstances we're living in. And in those moments, we find God. So we're doing this song called Blue Collar Praise. How fun is that? I've never heard a worship song talk about being blue collar before, but we're going to try it. So we'll teach it to y'all. Sing along as you feel comfortable.
We dream of you on city streets, breathing again on our bones. We dream of you at kitchen sinks, your glory filling our homes. We are not beasts of burden, we are children of grace, and the blue in our collars is a garment of praise. We dream of you on country roads, strolling along with our friends, leaving behind flickering screens to be together again. We are not beasts of burden, we are children of grace, and the blue in our collars is a garment of praise.
All right, so this next part, even if you don't know the words, let's see if you can put your hands together.
Let the earth rejoice. Let the seas resound. Let the people sing the songs of joy. Let the rocks cry out. Let the rivers roll. Let the people sing the songs of joy. Let the earth rejoice. Let the seas resound. Let the people sing their songs of joy. Let the rocks cry out. Let the rivers roll. Let the people sing their songs of joy. We are not beasts of burden. We are children of grace. And the blue in our collars is a garment of praise. We dream of you on city streets, breathing again on our bones.
Nice. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, kids, it is your time to go out for godly play. You are going to follow Christy and Trevor. Can you guys wave? Those are your grown-ups to go with. So kids, you can go out, and everybody else, we will sing our kids off. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Every color, shape, and type, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Thank you. You can have a seat. And we're about to join Jeremy on the video.
So this is weird. Hi everybody. This is Pastor Jeremy, and I'm coming to you from my basement. One of the things that, as we launched weekly worship in January, that we said that we wanted to be unique about the Grove Cottage Grove is that we take following Jesus seriously and ourselves less so. And so one of the things that we said was that anytime that you hear the word COVID in worship, you are given the permission to boo. So I'm hoping that when I just said COVID and gave you that opening, that you remembered to boo. I'm feeling especially that way today because I'm not there with you in person because I tested positive for COVID today. This is Saturday afternoon, which is not great, but it is a good reminder that we continue to be in a pandemic, continue to take it seriously, keeping yourself and people around you safe, and we're going to continue to go about this as best as we can. You're in good hands with Katie and everybody else leading you there in worship this morning. So I will hopefully be back with you next week. Not going to Texas as I had hoped. First vacation in 4 years. We had to cancel that, but such is life. COVID. Boo. Ironically, one of the things that I wanted to talk about this morning was last week was Easter Sunday, and it felt really normal. Today does not feel normal, but Easter Sunday felt really normal. Um, we were able to gather together in person. This was our first Easter as the Grove, Cottage Grove. And we were able to gather in person. We were able to do so without masks. We were able to do so without social distancing. We didn't have to spread everything way out. And it just felt normal, like almost like we were not still in the middle of a pandemic, nor maybe that we'd ever been in a pandemic at all. Anybody else feel that last week? Like it was just so awkwardly even normal. In the last couple months ago maybe, I read a relatively new book, and this passage in particular really stuck out to me, and I was thinking heavily about this past week. It says this: people don't talk much about the pandemic, but that was a terrible thing. It was like a war. It really was. One funeral after another. We lost so many people. And we got off pretty lucky. People came to church wearing masks, if they came at all. They'd sit as far from each other as they could. There was talk that foreigners had caused it with some sort of secret weapon. And I think people wanted to believe that because it saved them from reflecting on what other meaning it might have. I believe that plague was a great sign to us, and we refused to see it and take its meaning. And since then, we have had war continuously. I say this is a relatively new book because these words in this book was not written in 2022. It was not written in 2021. It was not even written in 2020. This book is, this passage is from the book Gilead, written by Marilyn Robinson in 2006. And the book's character, who is talking in this passage, is reflecting not on the COVID-19 pandemic, but on the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. You know, as a species that has evolved over millions of years, we as humans have gotten really good at avoiding change and failing to adopt new ways of thinking and being. It's like we find what we like, what is comfortable, what is familiar, what is normal, and we stick with it. Not because it works, not because it's the best thing for us, not because it's perfect, but because it is. Something we like, something that's comfortable, something that's familiar, something that is normal. It's like even if we're shaken from this normal by, I don't know, a pandemic, we make excuses or conspiracy theories and try to rush back rather than taking it as a sign that with deeper meaning and an opportunity to rethink what is both possible and necessary. Is there a way that we can avoid doing that? Well, that is what this next series that we are beginning today is all about. Today we're kicking off a new series which we're calling Back to Normal. I'm sorry, not Back to Normal, Back to Normal, crossed out, basics. The idea is that rather than rushing back to normal, perhaps this is actually a time for us to refocus on the basics, what really matters now, and what has really mattered all along. In other words, we want to get clear and consistent on what we value, our values, both as individuals and as a church. And to do that over the next 5 weeks, what we're going to be doing is we're looking at a story in the Bible known as the exile. Now, what I was going to do if I was in person with you today is I was going to have everybody close their eyes, and I was going to say, if you have no idea what the exile is, raise your hand. No shame, no guilt, whatever. Raise your hand if you have no idea what the exile is. If you have no idea what the exile is, it is okay. I did not have any idea what the exile was, even though I grew up in a very church, very Christian home, until I went to school for this stuff. I don't even know if I'd heard of the exile before. And what we're going to do today is we're going to present this as a topic that is going to kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the series, describing what on earth the exile was. The exile is a broad name for this period of time during which the people of Israel and Judah were forcibly removed from their home and everything that was familiar. It's like this stake in the ground moment where the people of Israel and Judah were able to look at it and say, oh, well, after this, everything is now different. There was a time not too long ago when it may have been difficult to grasp or envision what the experience of the exile was for the people of Israel and Judah. But unfortunately, when you think about the experience of the Jews going into exile, you need not look any further than the horrors that we're witnessing coming out of eastern Ukraine, perpetuated by the Russians against the people of Ukraine. And I think specifically of the city of Mariupol. Here's what's happening both in Ukraine and what was happening with the exile. One of the strongest militaries in the history of the world is rolling in as an occupying force, leveling entire cities, destroying cultural and religious centers, killing indiscriminately, kidnapping people and bringing them far from home where they can be integrated into the empire, effectively wiping out their culture, their identity, saying, you as a person might still exist, but you and your identity no longer exist. Obviously, international law was not on the books at this time, but as you think about what was happening in Israel and Judah, what they endured during the exile, it could fit pretty nicely under the United Nations definition of what genocide is. That definition includes two elements. The first is a mental element, the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, and a physical element, which includes the following 5 acts enumerated exhaustively: killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. These are the details, the horrifying details of what was happening in the exile. And at the same time, one of the things that we're learning from Ukraine is some of the most powerful and gut-wrenching things are actually the stories from people living through it. And we have some of that from the Bible as well. This comes from Psalm 137, one of these Jewish people describing their own situation. By the rivers of Babylon we sit down and weep when we remember Zion. On the poplars in her midst we hang our harps, for there our captors ask us to compose songs. Those who mock us demand that we be happy, saying, "Sing for us a song about Zion." How can we sing a song to the Lord in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand be crippled. May my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you and do not give Jerusalem priority over whatever gives me the most joy. Remember, O Lord, what the Edomites did on the last day Jerusalem fell. They said, tear it down, right to the very foundation. O daughter Babylon, soon to be devastated, how blessed will be the one who repays you for what you dished out on us. How blessed will be the one who grabs your babies and smashes them on a rock. Whew, yikes. This is a friendly reminder that the Bible is not a children's book. We get reminded of that every once in a while. This is raw stuff, right? It's real stuff, though. How, if you go through a situation like that, as horrifying and devastating as that, how can it not shape the way that you see yourselves, God, and the world? It can't not. right? And yet what we find in the exile and what happens after the exile is that not everyone sits by the waters of Babylon and weeps. Not everyone says, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to become Babylonian now. Instead, there's this group of people, sometimes they're called the remnant, who recentered themselves. They acknowledged the realities of their changed landscape, and they used it as an opportunity to go back to basics, to what mattered most now and always did. In this exile, this genocidal act that rips away their home, their family, their culture, everything that's familiar, the Jewish people look up to the stars and they start writing down their most important stories. Not just any stories, the stories that they want to make sure that they, their kids, their grandkids remember. When we look at the Old Testament, we find memory of the exile throughout its pages and right in the heart of it. Like if you literally open up the Old Testament, smack dab in the middle is the story of the exile. But on top of that, the memory of the exile is like weaved in and out of every single story that we have in the Old Testament. You see, memory it's not a transcript of events that happen. It's not like a Twitter feed where it's like the exact things that are happening as they're happening. Memory is shaped and it's constructed to communicate meaning going forward. And so as we read the stories of the Old Testament, we're witnessing memory making from hundreds of years after the events that they're describing. And they're grappling with the meaning of the exile in the process. It's one of those things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's present absolutely everywhere. And honestly, I think that reading the stories of the Old Testament like this, as memory-making pieces, it makes these stories even more interesting. I could see grandparents sitting in Babylon looking up at the stars with their children and their grandchildren, and they're telling them these most important stories. They're telling them stories like the creation of the world, which was not meant to convey how and when everything came into existence, but more to tell them about the loving God that brought all of it into existence. Stories like the story of Adam and Eve, people living in a paradise, but were exiled. Sound familiar? Exiled following their selfish deeds. Stories of people like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, thoroughly imperfect people who said yes to God, even and especially when life was uncertain. Stories like Job, a man who did absolutely everything right, and still things went bad for him, and there were no answers. Stories that answer basic questions like, who are we? Who is God? What is the world? What went wrong? How can we do better? And most importantly, what do we do now? And then something peculiar happened. Time passed, generation passed, and normal faded from the realm of possibility. Exile, rather than being this new normal, simply became normal. Just in time for another empire known as the Persian Empire to come in and defeat the Babylonians and to come to the Jewish people and say, guess what? You can go home now if you want. But there's this open question of, are they going to go home? They've been here for so long that now this is their normal. This is, for many of them, their home. For some of them, the only home that they've ever known. And so would they go back to their home? And if they did, would they remember the lessons and the stories they learned? Or would they just go back to normal? That is the story and the topic we are engaging with for the rest of this series. Now, I just want to be really clear here. Our situation as privileged people living through a pandemic in the wealthiest and most powerful empire in the history of the world is not remotely the same as the Judean exiles, as Native Americans, nor Ukrainians, nor any people who have actually experienced genocide or displacement. Those things are, our situation is not comparable. It's just not. And sometimes looking at the most extreme examples is the best way to like get ourselves unsettled to look into our own situation. A little over 2 years ago, we were shaken from our normal by a once-in-a-century pandemic. Almost overnight, our understanding of basically the whole world shifted. Very little felt safe, right? Very little felt familiar. And those shifts, they revealed these fractures in ourselves, fractures in our relationships, in our social infrastructure, in our institutions, fractures that if we acknowledge them would maybe reshape the way we understand ourselves, God, and the world. But we are privileged people living through a pandemic in the wealthiest and most powerful empire in the history of the world. In so many more ways than the majority of people in the world, that privilege, that wealth, that power has given us the opportunity to forget those lessons and go back to normal if we choose. So the question for you, the question for me, the question for us is, will we? Will we go back to normal? Well, I certainly hope not. Otherwise, this is going to be a bummer of a series. There's a leadership quote that says, never let a good crisis go to waste. We have found ourselves in a crisis, and it is not time to let that crisis go to waste. If something is fundamentally broken, why would we want to go back to it? So instead of rushing back to normal, a normal that might not actually exist, I'm convinced that now is the time for us as individuals, for us as people as faith, to go back to the basics. Not to rebuild with these blocks that were torn down and clearly not up to the quality that they need to be, but stripping things down to the very foundation, to the basics, to the most important things now that always have been, and then building on that. And I believe that if we do that, if we're open to doing that, the things that we rebuild are going to be beautiful. They're going to be more beautiful than the things that they are replacing. It's going to provide a more beautiful picture of ourselves, of God, and of the world. So I hope that you'll join us in doing that. I hope that you'll join us for this series, but I hope that you'll also engage in this actual work as a church and as individuals. And as Marilyn Robinson says in her book, Gilead, I believe this plague was a great sign to us. And I pray that we will take its meaning. Let that be so.
Well, the song I wanted to return to this morning is one we've done throughout last year. It's one that Jacob and I wrote actually as a part of another church plant we were a part of when we lived in Illinois, and just learning what it means to be a church. And how, we have these foundational elements of God that we turn to and that we hold on to. The goodness of God, the hope, peace, joy, love, all of those things. We have that to hold on to and to unify us. But as we are coming together as a community of faith and seeking God together, it's often messy and beautiful, but often messy. And so this song came out of that experience. And So as we as a church are in a new time of life, a new time of transition, I hope this song, though it was written kind of out of a different church experience, it still holds true that this whole faith community thing we're doing is both messy and beautiful, and yet God will be there to guide us through it all. So if you will rise and join us in singing, I would love that.
the truth, the way.
I just want to give a thanks to our friend Ben here, our new friend Ben, who played piano this morning. If y'all have been coming since we launched in January, you've seen a lot of different musicians up here, and I don't know how I've managed to be so fortunate. I've found most of them on Facebook and through mutual friends, and Ben is one I found through a mutual friend, through Flora, who's been singing with us, and like, y'all don't know how lucky we are to keep getting such incredible people in here to play with us, and we'll continue to have more. So thank you for being here. Okay, let's see what Jeremy has for us. He put some slides in here. This is a part that I normally don't do. If there's one thing we need to know before we go today, what is it? Get involved. Heck yeah, get involved. There's so many ways to get involved. In the band. I'm always going to put in a plug for that. But like any level of commitment, whether you just want to show up and pass some baskets on a Sunday morning, or if you want to volunteer in bigger ways, there's so many ways. And we want to like create ways for people to volunteer too, because there's so many gifts among all of you and interests, and we want to start including that. We want what you all bring to the table to influence who we are and how we function as a church. We're not just trying to like plug in different roles. We do have things that we need help with on Sunday mornings and outside of Sunday mornings. But if you have something that you're like, I wonder if the church could use this level of expertise or knowledge or interest that I have, yes. The answer is yes. Come talk to us. Or fill out on your little card if there's something you're interested in. And is there anything else? Grove groups, yeah. If you don't know, if you're wanting to connect with people outside of a Sunday morning and get to know other people that are here, we have like small groups for that. Some of them are topical, some of them are just like hang out, get to know each other, that kind of thing. So you can sign up for that as well. And remember, there's baskets at the back table by the doors there. If you have a card or something you want to throw in the basket on your way out, you may do that. Oh, we love the squeaky toys. Okay, before we go today, Jeremy usually has a blessing over us. I just want to say that as we continue to move forward as a church and as a community, may we not be defined by our habits and behaviors and sort of an arbitrary set of expectations we have for ourselves, but may we as a community learn how to live a values-based life, and our values will be what drives us. All right? Go in peace. Thank you for being here.